Idag kommer vi faktiskt få chansen att prata med Bernard Walsh från Walsh Whiskey. Och jag och Jonas här kommer att ha en liten trevlig snackstund med honom och snacka lite irländsk whisky och en hel del om de produkter som faktiskt de redan har här i Sverige.
Det ska bli kul.
Ja, men det ska bli jätteroligt och framförallt är det The Irishman och Writers Tears som kanske ni där hemma också har stött på och testat vid tillfällen.
Ja, det är väl dags. Ja, just det. Glöm inte bort. Har ni några frågor, skriv i chatten. Och så ställer vi frågorna naturligtvis efterhand. Och glöm inte bort. Skriv.
Full fart med frågor i kommentarerna så ska vi nog se till att få Bernard att jobba hela livestreamen. Och vi kommer att hålla på i ungefär 45 minuter till en timme. Så att ha det så jättebra där hemma i soffan och följ med oss här nu. Så det är väl dags, va?
Jag tycker jag.
Kör på.
So Bernard, welcome.
To be with you and our friends in Sweden this evening. I believe it's raining there, so it's good whiskey weather. I hope you've all got your glasses charged.
Yeah, we're ready. And of course, it's a good weather for a dram or two, but I'm pretty sure that it's always a good weather for a dram.
Yeah,
we'll make the excuse, whatever the weather we're going to make.
There are no like bad excuses. That's for sure.
No. We're going to have some fun this evening, and I feel like I'm in an Irish pub out in the middle of the countryside here with you guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what at least we want to be, but we have tried in our way.
The environment. Yeah.
We would love to have the live music and so on, but that would be another episode where we try to play instruments.
Yeah.
That would be a very short live stream, I think.
Yeah.
Bernard, for the consumers and people and followers out there that are checking us out tonight, can you tell us a bit about you and maybe about the company that you're actually working with and have been with from the very start?
I can indeed, and maybe before we even start, I'm just going to have I just want to wet my whistle here.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I'll join you.
And for our viewers, we'll talk more about the individual whiskey expressions as we go through, but rather than make a big song and dance about it, we'll taste the whole way through. So I'm in this I'm in Walsh Whiskey business, which I created along with my wife back in 1999. That's 22 years ago. It feels like it's an age for me. It's a serious amount of time that I've put in on my wife and the whole team here. But in Irish whiskey, of course, it's not very long. Irish whiskey, like Scotch whiskey, are our near neighbours and cousins. We've been in the whiskey business for centuries. The Irish will always claim one over the Scots, of course, and that's another story. But growing up, I'm a farmer's son, and growing up on the farm, there was always whiskey in the cupboard because my grandfather drank whiskey. My father didn't drink whiskey. And I remember, my grandfather, unfortunately, was blind in the latter years of his life, and going every day after his constitutional walk, he'd walk a mile and back and sit and have a glass of whiskey. And I would always maybe get the lickings of the glass at the end. And that was my introduction to whiskey. But I always loved the thought of this is coming from barley, which could grow on our farm or neighbors' farms, or this amazing aromatic and sweet and liquid is coming from grains that grow. And wow, this really got to me, if you like. But unfortunately, on farming life, there was 9 of us, a small Irish family, 9 of us. So I was sort of one of the 8 that were kicked out, educated well, and asked to go with the rest of the Irish and go and visit the world. So I graduated in computer science and had a very interesting career in technology for first 16 years of my working life, and it was just fabulous. I traveled the world, great experiences. But the ones that stood out for me were time I spent in France and in Italy, where my break time was going to vineyards, and I just really felt at home in vineyards. And something that stuck with us, if we were back in Ireland, our vines would be barley, our grapes was barley, and our wine would be whiskey. And that really stuck with me. And I got the opportunity in 1999 to return home with my wife Rosemary, and we said, listen, we get this one chance, and we were going to start something that we're passionate about. We said we'd give it a go. We didn't know if it would succeed or not, and it was all based around whiskey. So yeah, that's a starting point, let's say, for today, Emma.
But a lot of people maybe go abroad and they're visiting vineyards or distilleries, and they have this romantic picture and want to start up something on their own. But from that idea to actually doing it,
yes,
that's of course that takes a lot of planning and all sorts of things. But do you have to be a bit mad to do it, or is
it helps, Emma? It helps, right?
It helps.
Ignorance or the lack of know-how, it really helps, because if I knew too much, I probably wouldn't have done it, because there's so many barriers to any business you want to get into. But in whiskey, the barriers to entry are really, really high. And if I knew too much, I wouldn't have taken the first baby steps and so forth. So knowing a little, which was the passion that we just love, this idea of growing, taking barley and turning it into this beautiful aromatic liquid. And right down to, we actually grew in our early years, just an experiment. Let's grow. We had, I think, 35 acres of barley.
Really?
So from sowing it, we just monitored the whole way. And at the end, it went off to the malting company to be malted. And I think, what we say here is, we sort of washed our face. We barely washed our face with it. We didn't make any money, but we didn't lose anything either. But the key thing was, it was a learning, and just for us to understand the full process. So they were all little steps. But the biggest break I got was when in '99 we did decide to return to Ireland. I took time out to spend with the distillers in Ireland. And can you believe it? There were only 3 distilleries in Ireland back then in 1999.
Yeah.
Today, there are 38, but back then there was 3, of which 2 of them, Middleton and Bushmills, were owned by Irish distillers. So those 2 accounted for 95% of all Irish whiskey. So it was a vastly different time. There was nobody knocking down the door saying, "Can I have another Irish whiskey?" I remember going to the bars and you come, going in with my wee bottle and saying, "Listen, any chance there's room on the shelf for another Irish whiskey?" And say, "No, I have one. Why do I need a second one?" Whereas now, today,
it's enough. Yeah, we have one.
You've got a back bar full of Irish whiskies and other whiskies as well. Like, it's, I have one. I don't need another one. So that was there was no demand. So again, thankfully, I didn't know too much. So in ignorance, just kept pushing on. But I was amazed in my research at how big Irish whiskey was 200 years ago, 150 years ago, even 100 years ago, how big Irish whiskey was. That really got me. And I studied it. The guys in Irish distillers in Middleton were brilliant. I spent lots of time down there immersed in the world of whiskey, learned a lot, learned about, in the 1800s, the jewel of Irish whiskey was something called single pot still whiskey. And, just getting a taste for that, it's a wonderful whiskey. And then dragging myself back into the 1990s and saying, well, why is Irish whiskey almost on the way out? It was near oblivion. And Scotch was, Scotch whiskey was 85 million cases back then. Irish whiskey was only 2 million cases. Scotch was 90 million. So, it's just a chasm between it. And, so for me, it all started with that research and the enthusiasm to maybe recreate what made Irish whiskey great, or to at least have a go at that. Irish whiskey over the last century, was dumbed down to something very, very simple. People talked about Irish whiskey being simple, smooth, easy drinking. Well, it should be complex. There should be so much more to it. And that's what really got to me, and say, well, can I help in this? Can I help in broadening out the taste profile for Irish whiskey? I saw that as a reason to exist in the business for starters.
Oh, you had a question here.
Yeah, I mean, since you started in '99, how do you think the Irish whiskey scene actually changed since you started? I mean, of course you have more distilleries, but I mean,
yeah. Well, I suppose first and foremost, we have not changed in our principal concept from back then, which is to broaden out the taste profile, and starting with amazing distillate. So we work with Irish distillers from day one, and we get amazing distillate from them. And then, it is finding casks suitable, the whole maturation, the ultimate blending, and bringing something new and different. And just to give you an idea, in 2008, we brought out the Irishman cask strength Irish whiskey. It was the first commercially available cask strength Irish whiskey in living memory. That's sinful. Of course, there should have been lots of different cask strength whiskies available to taste. If you went to Scotland in 2008, pick 100 of them. In Ireland, none. So this was part of. But why would there be? There was no need. And I'll bring in the word monopoly. So there was a virtual monopoly in Ireland. And for many reasons, not good or bad, but that's what happened. That's the way it ended up. And you'll be familiar with the monopoly type of system. So when you've got that virtual monopoly, well, I'll keep bringing out whiskey at 40% all day, every day, because I make more money. So there was no. So we had to try, and there was a challenge, and then to try and broaden out. So these were the things. So things you take for granted now. You have cask strength whiskey on demand from Ireland now, but not back then. We talk about all the new distilleries. What was very important in 2014, work has started before 2014, but in 2014, we formed the Irish Whiskey Association. I was one of the founding members, along with some great guys from Irish Distillers, Bushmills, Tullamore, and the whole idea was to bring everybody in the Irish whiskey community together, north and south, east and west in the island. This was one island united in whiskey. And the reason of coming together is to make ourselves a bigger entity. We wanted to create a bigger whiskey category. And to do that, we needed, first of all, to protect the category. Irish whiskey, we needed to get what they call a GI, geographical indication, within Europe, such as Champagne had or Cognac had, and we succeeded in that. We also wanted to promote Irish whiskey as a category. It had, its main base really being in North America, but we wanted to promote Irish whiskey globally. And finally, support. So set up a network to support and encourage new distillers and new whiskey companies. Because when I started, there was nothing. There was nobody.
Has it been? Sorry, Bernard. No, I'm just curious because I hear all of those things. And has it been easier? And have you done this together through this? And the distilleries, big and small, has it helped a lot to come out in the international markets and so on? How does it help the Irish?
I suppose there's a saying, and I'm sure you have it there. It may have actually originated in Sweden, which is "all boats rise." With as a tide rise, all boats rise. So that's what's happened. So first of all, we want to create different flavors. So distilleries and whiskey companies are working, whether it's with the terroir, whether it's with the distillate, whether it's with the cask, the blending, all sorts of combinations, which did not exist in the Irish category 10 years ago, not to mind when we started. So all this, so getting more people involved, especially a lot more craft and artisan. And because that started to work, the bigger guys, then they start, so their, let's call it their new product development, really kick into action, and them bringing, opening up their cellars and bringing out unusual casks, which they had lain there and maybe would have ended up in a blend at some stage, who knew? But so everybody started challenging each other, and we all started rising. But we're all trying to beat each other, if you like, because we want to be the best.
Of course,
the best whiskey expression that we can. So you end up with this. This is just infectious now, and it's rising.
And a lot of a lot of the consumers here in Sweden, when I speak to them, I find that finally, slowly, they are more. They know more about Irish whiskey again. They're more curious. They know that there are so much to choose from, and that there is actually a whiskey for everyone there, because it's so much, so many different ones. I mean, and you have, like we talked about a couple of days ago, when we had a meeting about that you're able to use different kind of casks, not only oak and things like that. That must give you a whole world of different.
If you consider us as painters, if you like, the palette that we have to work from is so much broader than maybe what our Scottish cousins have, because we have this extra style called pot still over single malt. We can work with different woods, not just oak. Now, there is a good reason why you work with oak, but that still doesn't stop the experimentation. On the pot still side, it's not just barley. We can use other grains in there as well. There's a whole heap of permutations, which mean that we, the Irish whiskey that's on offer today is, the breadth of it is amazing. And we're only, we're not there yet. There's so much more work to do. But I'd like to think that the Swedish consumer has slowly been introduced to that now, as we and other Irish whiskey companies make their way through the Systembolaget system and protocols and rules of operation. But thankfully also, COVID has been interesting because it's allowed the Irish speak directly to the Swedish people through the likes of yourselves. We're speaking with whiskey enthusiasts directly, because prior to this, maybe we were a little bit shy and we'd wait for the whiskey festival to go over, etc. And so now I think the Irish are telling their story more. We like to tell stories, as you know, so we're telling the stories more, and there's so much to do yet.
I think, from my point of view, Irish whiskey is experimental in a way, and it's really exciting to follow the development through the years. But do you see any risks?
Just before I go into the risk, because yes, everything has a risk. Foresights. We did. There was no need for coppersmiths in Ireland since a long time ago. But foresights from Scotland, the famous, the kingmakers in the coppersmiths and making those beautiful pot stills, have now set up here in Ireland, and that tells you something. For the Scots to do that, that's a big statement of it. Intent here. They're coming here. They see the growth, and that's exciting. Now, to be honest, to your question, there is risk, of course. And the old saying, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. So unfortunately, whiskey business is no different to your business or anybody else's business. To somebody who's got a wee shop, to somebody who's making widgets or whatever, they're businesses, and they have to be, unless you've got a bag full of cash in the back that you're trying to spend, they've got to stack up commercially. So short, medium, long term, it's a huge commitment. The whiskey business, again, had you asked me in 1999 where I saw myself in 2021, I wouldn't have been able to pass on all the stories that I do now. It's a long journey. There is no shortcut in whiskey, and that's what I love, because you don't have to look over your back to see, you know, who's coming, what's happening. It's a long journey, and we're on this long journey. We've been on for 22 years. The whiskies and the experiments get better and better. Not everything works, of course. Some of our experiments don't, but you don't get to hear about those. But the good ones you get to hear about. But you know, there is challenge, and I do know, you know, from time to time I get contacted because some small distillers are in trouble, etc. You've got the usual cash flow, etc. So there's there's a lot in it, and I can tell, you know, I can tell the story from a number of different sides because I've been in the whiskey business since '99, working with Irish distillers, laying down stocks, working with amazing casks suppliers from all around the world, traveling the world, trying to source these amazing casks, then building our own distillery, then divesting of that because of shareholder problems. So I've seen it. I've seen a lot of it, and you know, yet I wake up in the morning, and if you said to me, you know, are you ready to build another distillery? I say yes.
That sounds great. I have an Irish Writers Tears. Sorry, Writers Tears Distillers Edition in the glass right now. So
I'm going to switch horses here because I was sipping another one. But yeah.
Well, cheers, everyone, and cheers. Everyone that is watching, don't forget to ask Bernard or us a couple of questions down in the comments, and we'll try and answer you guys as quickly and as good as possible.
Yeah. While we're talking about Writers Tears, I mean, Bernard, could you please tell us a little bit about Writers Tears? Yeah.
So everything we've done in whiskey is based on going back in time before we went forward. So understanding what made Irish whiskey so great. And one of the jewels, and I spoke about, was the single pot still of the 1800s. It's a very big-bodied, if you like, you know, I'd compare it to a real big Rioja wine, if you like. It's a big-bodied whiskey, lots of fruit. There's some lovely sweet tones in there. This is a whiskey I loved. This is really probably what fueled Irish whiskey back in the 1800s. And in our sort of research and work there, we saw that the actual blend of the day was a pot and malt combine. So if you think of single malt and single pot still, well, the combine of that became known as the champagne of Irish whiskey. It's just a wonderful, just lovely waves and different tones when you're drinking here. So each time you take a little sip, you just feel that there's little nuances and different flavor profiles coming through. So that's what I love about that. And that's what Writers Tears is. It's a recreation of that pot and malt combine. So we were the first, if you like, in modern time to bring this back after probably 100 years of absence. So that's the benefit of having new whiskey companies coming. You know, we want to explore. We want to bring you something different and something amazing in taste. It's always got to deliver on taste. So so Writers Tears, because we have two sides to the house, and we'll talk about the Irishman in a while, and Writers Tears one side and the Irishman's at the other. They're both very, very different. And if you've got two children, you can imagine, well, Writers Tears is my rebel without a cause. It's my rebel, and it's very, very different. And I wanted to create, so I was very taken in the early 2000s with the revolution in bourbon and all that was happening. And I spent some time over in Kentucky to start with, and traveling then outside that to some other distilleries in America, and really loved the edginess of what was happening. And I said, why can't Irish be like that? You know, we don't need to be Glen this and Glen that. You know, let's give it something, you know, a little bit of something different. And so Writers Tears is that the response to what I learned in the US in the early 2000s. And I suppose the story goes for us with the name. So back in the 1800s, Irish whiskey was going through a boom, a golden era. Also, Irish literature. So, Dublin and Ireland was home to some of the great poets, playwrights in Ireland, in the world.
Yeah.
Joyce, Yeats, Beckett, George Bernard Shaw. It was just amazing. And there is a story told in Ireland that our great writers, loved a drop of whiskey, and they particularly liked this blend of pot malt. And when they would want to, I suppose, not inspiration, but more, they would take to a pub. If you go to Dublin, you'll see some of the pubs will have a plaque saying this is where George Bernard Shaw would sit and have his tipple. This is where Joyce would sit. And many of them would sit there for an hour, hours, or days, just watching the world go by.
Yeah.
The story goes that they drank so much whiskey that when they cried, their tears were of whiskey. So, that little story, because we loved it. And it was a great bringing together of the scribe and the spirit together. Yeah. So that's.
I hope that Håkan also now got his question answered, because he just wrote that where does the name come from? So, I mean, this is a proper story and a really good name. I had no idea it came from that.
Yes, and we'll move. I know we're going to move on later to Double Oak, but I just wanted to. At the moment in Sweden, we have Writers Tears packed as so, but we have upgraded the bottle and the label and the design and everything else. So later this year, the new bottle. Well, we'll look. Sorry, where are we? Something I can hear. So I'm trying to. On the label, we have an extract from one of James Joyce's books, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man.
Really?
The lovely Writer's Tears cut out on the label. At last, teardrop embellished here. And also lots of technical detail on the neck label, which we have never had before. So there are a lot of nuances in Irish whiskey, which we take for granted, but we actually need to explain to the consumer. So especially our fans in Sweden. So that'll be coming soon. Yeah. By the way, just while I think that, June the 16th, coming up next week, is Bloomsday. So it's a celebration of James Joyce and all things Ulysses. And in Dublin, every year they recreate that one day in Dublin where James Joyce, Leopold Bloom, the character in the Ulysses book, travels through Dublin and everything he meets on the way. So that's recreated every year, and we're heavily involved in it. And we sponsor.
What date was it?
June the 16th.
16th.
Yeah.
We have to remember that. That's a good idea and a good reason too to celebrate, right, with whiskey.
It is. And it's big internationally. He's a well-known writer, renowned, and Ulysses, one of the great books of the last century. So actually, next year is the 100th anniversary, and we're doing something special for that. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
I've also heard, some rumors about Writers Tears that we have a special version of it in Sweden.
Well, you are very special people in Sweden. So, listen, you're all very familiar with Systembolaget, and it's very difficult for arts and small craft whiskey companies, no matter what country they're from, to get a listing in Sweden. So we have to wait and see what the Systembolaget want companies to pitch for. So, so they put up whatever a regular listing for Irish whiskey, and we do nothing regular. Everything is we over deliver. That's what we want to do. We try to do anyways. Give you something more for your dollar, for your euro, for your Swedish kroner. We want to give you more value and more. So rather than just bring out a 40%. Writers Tears, we've given you what we call Distillers Edition, and it's at 46%. Correct? Yeah, there it is there.
Okay.
So you were the first country in the world to receive this, especially for Sweden.
That sounds great.
I think that all of the Swedish whiskey enthusiasts are quite thrilled over that, actually.
Yeah.
Like you said, it hasn't been that much of that kind of Irish whiskey with a higher percent of alcohol, but it's coming up more and more, and So it's I'm super excited to be able to follow the different steps that is going on right now in Ireland. Small distilleries coming up. I mean, really small, and also the bigger ones are doing like they're meeting a whole different whiskey scene out there now.
Exactly, like the bigger distilleries and whiskey companies are on steroids because they've got the cash and the resource to do it. So they've really taken flight now, and that's fantastic for us. And because the category is getting bigger, the bigger the category, the more opportunity for the smaller company. So it's it's really interesting. If you, Emma, came to Ireland 10 years ago, to visit distilleries, you really had one big one in the north, Bushmills, and one big one in the south, Middleton, and it was a long 400 kilometers between the two or whatever. So the chances of you doing a whiskey tour were slim to none. Whereas now I'll be saying to you, Emma, decide which region you want to go to.
Exactly.
Which is amazing. It's almost, we have north and south on the island. We have 32 counties. We have 38 distilleries. So now you're looking at. And I'd love to see that where, I love what they've done in Scotland with the regional variants and the Highland and Lowland and Islay, etc. So wouldn't it be wonderful in Ireland and it would take a lot of time for this to develop, but wouldn't it be brilliant? You're saying, listen, I'm coming and I'm going to Munster and I'm going to see the Munster whiskey, or I'm going to Connacht or Ulster and so forth.
It feels like a long way to come to that, but then again, like you say, 10-15 years ago we would never have guessed that it would go so quickly. And I mean, it's so different today than just 10 years ago, as you said, and the whiskeys that we get here now, if you compare it to just a couple of years ago, you can't compare that either. So I think that the Swedish consumers should be very happy, and hopefully we will get more different whiskies from Ireland in the future. But how would you see, what do you think will happen in the next upcoming 10 years in the Irish whiskey scene, but also for you guys? Where would you like to see your company in 10 years?
Sure. Well, listen, on the Irish whiskey scene, we've come from a low base. We've gone from back in 99, 2 million cases to Irish whiskey is now 12 million cases. So it's come a long way, but still it's a drop in the ocean. There's a long way to go. So we see, I think my colleagues and friends in the Whiskey Association are saying that by 2026, Irish whiskey will surpass Scotch whiskey sales in the USA. Now that is a change. That's a moment, because the US for us have led the way in so many things. They set trends, and ourselves and other countries around the world, and the consumers, we sort of follow their lead at times. So that's a big moment when the Irish whiskey sales in North America, in the USA, pass out Scotch. It happened, I'm going to go back maybe 7 years ago, let's say. Irish whiskey passed out Scotch malt sales in the US, so that was a milestone. So here's a new milestone in 2026, roughly. We expect Irish whiskey sales, and the rate at which Irish whiskey are growing is phenomenal. So Irish whiskey through the pandemic might have come off a point or two because of the pandemic. Scotch whiskey sales fell by 13%. So the consumer, the new Irish whiskey fan is a younger fan. It's we're sort of in that 25 to 45, and the Scotch whiskey drinker generally tends to be in an older segment. So we like to think that we have a younger audience, and we've a long way to grow with that. So what Irish whiskey sales today, 12 million. They should at least double that by 2030 to 24 million. I hope I'm around to drink to that.
But I would love to have this conversation in 10 years and see how it ended up. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, maybe it's who knows. But it's exciting to think about.
And for me, like we've got so many experiments, because again, the Irish whiskey definition, there's so much room for development here. So we have lots of casks tucked away, and we today was a classic example. I only have one of these. It was an experiment. It is the Irishman whiskey, which we can move on to talk to in a minute, but the Irishman whiskey in a peated red ale cask, right? Now, so we're bottling it, and it's been sold to the Irish Whiskey Society, because one cask, we're not going to, there's very little we can do with that on the export market. So our friends in the Irish Whiskey Society said we'd do it together. So but today it came to bottling, and the liquid was very murky, and I wish, actually, 1 second, I might have a bottle here to show you.
Det här är bästa med livesändningen. Att man kan få göra så här. Jag gillar det. Det här är precis som man vill ha det. Det är som att sitta hemma i någons vardagsrum och någon kommer på en idé. Då måste man ju kolla det direkt.
Right. So this is whiskey, yeah. So this is the peated red ale. The whiskey.
Right.
So it tastes amazing.
Yeah.
But it looks terrible. So, but my friends in the Whiskey Society absolutely love the flavor, the taste, and we'll clean it up as best we can. But they, so they're interesting experiments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we learn from that. I did something similar with a coffee stout cask as well. So if you stout, and it was beautiful, very creamy. The whiskey, when it matured, it was very creamy, but again, quite murky and difficult to make available commercially. But we have lots of experience. We've got a real special one coming later this year for Sweden. It will be a first for us in Sweden, and I'll mention it. We did a little tasting privately in Sweden there, and it got thumbs up. So it's a Japanese Mizunara oak cask. So you can imagine our whiskies with that pot still, the Writers Tears, that pot still spice in it. It's a beautiful sort of almost ginger-like spice in our whiskey. Add that to Mizunara oak, which really loads on those spicy notes, and it's wonderful. It really is.
We're
wonderful.
Looking forward to that launch. That's for sure.
It's a single cask. It'll be a single cask. It'll be limited, but I would say watch
super
out.
Limited, and as long as I have the opportunity to buy one in Systembolaget, I'm happy.
And the great thing about it is unlike the beer barrels, it comes out. This is a Mizunara oak cask. It comes out very clean.
Yeah. But when it comes to whiskey, and we did talk a bit about the Writers Tears that we actually have here in Sweden, and what more expressions do we have here in Sweden? Can you tell us a bit more about them, so that the viewers can know what they can find here right now?
Okay, well, so while we're at Writers Tears, I'll stay with the next expression, which is Writers Tears Double Oak, which you will be able to get. And I don't have pricing details, but I'm sure you do.
We have it here. We have it, yeah.
So one of our experiments was with cognac casks. So I have a very good friend in cognac called Roland Legare. And his family have a beautiful cognac distillery in France, and we worked with them accessing some of their beautiful casks. We brought it across, a couple of casks, worked our whiskey in it for a while. The combination was wonderful. So that lovely cognac, I can almost taste it here now before I even get the liquid in. And layering, just as it layers, coming in out of the wood with an Irish whiskey. For me, Irish whiskies and ours are triple distilled, non-peated, so they're open to be influenced. So the influence was amazing. But that was a one-off, and I said it was so good. Could we continue this and maybe make it available to more people? So we rechristened it Double Oak. So the French oak with cognac casks, the American oak. So we rechristened it Double Oak, and we've made it available to a number of markets. and recently to Sweden. So there you go. That's the old bottle, and then this is the new bottle here, if it's visible.
Beautiful.
And it comes with a nice box. So a very interesting piece of artwork on it, and it's if you like, graffiti sketch with various writers, famous Irish writers over the centuries. So you can have fun trying to work them out.
I bet it works better to try and guess it after a few drams. I don't know.
Exactly. I'm really sure I saw your face on here, Emma.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure I'm there.
It's definitely in code.
Of course. Yeah, of course it is. In code.
Yeah.
So that's Writers Tears Double Oak. Now, I happen to have one poured just in case you did ask me about it. So. That's
good. You're so well planned and everything. Cheers, everyone.
Sláncha.
Sláncha. And everyone at home, please, if you have a dram in your hand or if you're drinking something else, comment and tell us a bit more about what you have in your glass, or if you're going to pour yourself a dram this next upcoming weekend, we would love to know what that could be. Maybe we will have some good recommendations, who knows, to try for the weekend.
Exactly.
The Irishman.
The Irishman, exactly. The Irishman.
So
that's another expression from you guys.
So this is the other side of the family. I want you to meet the Irishman, tall, good-looking gentleman.
Yeah.
And again, this is another first for Sweden, because we do, special things to get into Sweden. So it's available in a small bottle, first and foremost. The Irishman majors on the malt side of the house, whereas Pot Still majored on Writers Tears majored on the pot still side of the house. So the Irish is majoring on single malt, and the use of single malt either in blends or in age statement whiskies, which we have under the Irishman brand. And back in the 1800s, it was pot and malt. The Irish, while may have trademarked and patented the column stills, they didn't readily embrace the use of grain whiskey or column still whiskey, and it was shunned on. And whiskey coming from the copper pot, the pot and the malt whiskies, these were whiskies of note. These were flavoursome whiskies. So our friends and cousins in Scotland, which I've mentioned several times today, they've done a wonderful job over the last 40 years in shining a light on single malt. And now I think, while I suppose in my early years, Bushmills were the real light out there and trying to shine a light on Irish whiskey, there's room for more of us to do that and to broaden out the taste profile for single malt Irish whiskey. So the Irishman Founders Reserve is just, for me, pound for pound, possibly the best Irish whiskey you can get. I've said that, but the Chicago Beverage Tasting Institute in the USA equally said that in rating this whiskey. It gave it 94 points and said best value for money, pound for pound on Irish whiskey. So this is, for what you get. And I would challenge our listeners and viewers today, take a nip, go get a bottle, try it, taste it against one of your other Irish whiskies in that category. So let's say a Jamie or a Tullamore or whatever you like, and you will just see the difference, right? Where we over deliver on the single malt. We're not watering it down with grain whiskey. Everything in the bottle has been distilled in the copper pot, and it is just a wow for the price. So I think it was $159 there price wise, which
right.
Listen, we in Ireland, if you're buying this whiskey, and you'll have to do some transit, like it's going to be minimum €35 for a bottle. We do have a 700 ml bottle, but it will be minimum €35. In order for us to get into Sweden, we had to give them the shirt off our back and say, we desperately want the Swedish whiskey community to taste our whiskies. What do we have to do? and they said, well, this is the price point you need to hit. And I had to sell a bit of furniture, but we did it.
Yeah. Yeah, we appreciate that. But what I like is actually because a few years ago, a lot more small bottles came up with whiskeys again in the Systembolaget and the Monopoly. And I always asked, who is going to buy that? And it was not only really cheap whiskey, it was really all kinds of whiskey.
Yeah.
And now I understand the positive side of it, because if you haven't tried a whiskey and you want to try it, maybe you can't afford a bottle, or maybe you don't want to spend the money before you know what you're buying. It's a quite good idea to actually buy a small bottle and try it, and then if you like it, then you can, of course, buy a big bottle. But it's not such a bad idea actually to have small bottles, because it's easier to try if it's
exactly. I agree with you, and it's. There are probably some times, and I'm just going to say, listen, if I'm going to the mountains for the weekend and we say, I don't want to be well, here's a little half bottle or whatever in the bag, she won't notice or he won't notice pulling it up the hill. It's a small little bottle, and it's a great way to try new whiskies. And in fairness to Systembolaget, they used a small bottle. This is unique to Sweden. Another, we do not have these small bottles produced for anybody else, only you, because it was the only way we could get in. And it was, I suppose, a little bit of foresight by Systembolaget to open it up to other whiskey companies. I suppose a little war story maybe with our little bottle here is that I think, I'm trying to think, was it 3 or 4, maybe let's say it was 4 ourselves and 3 others who had listings. So the 3 other big companies and ourselves. And whoever sold least in the year will be dropped off at the end of the year. So thankfully, the Irishman sold really well. And it was one of the big guys who had to be dropped off the list. But the rules were changed and they were not dropped off the list, and they divvied out, they halved our number of stores and they gave the other half to the other brand. So, it is difficult again for small whiskey companies with great liquid. So why should the Swedish consumer be deprived of some amazing liquids? Ideally, if Systembolaget were listening, to get, or even your listenership there to, write and let the Systembolaget know that the system is a little bit unfair.
Yeah, and maybe for everyone that is watching our live stream, we could put up the different whiskies that are available here if you have forgotten what we talked about and want to know what the prices are and so on. So we will do that on the website and remind you all after this a bit later this week. But when it comes to cocktails and whiskey cocktails, are you up for? Do you drink your whiskey neat, or would you like?
Yeah.
Do you recommend you do cocktails maybe for the summer?
Yeah, well, listen, it depends on the time of day. It really does. Because here, well, we've only 2 types of days here. We've got rain days and non-rain days.
Okay.
And today's a non-rain day, so that's cocktail. If it's a rain day for me, I'm going to be sipping it neat. I'm going to be, opening a nice bottle and just sitting in the corner in a nice couch and maybe chatting to friends, maybe by the fire if that's what's needed. But for the summer, I absolutely love cocktails. And I love when I go to the big cities. I live down the country here, so I'm a country bumpkin. But when I go to New York or, getting into the Capitol Bar and sitting there and looking very sophisticated with, an old-fashioned, straight up my favorite whiskey, and old-fashioned, my favorite cocktail. I just love it. But my team here at Walsh Whiskey, and if you get a chance for anybody to go onto walshwhiskey.com, check out some amazing cocktails that have been created with the team and some mixologists, and they're real fun. But one that's very simple, and many of your listeners may have had this before, but in the summertime, this for me, beats any spritzer. It's fun, it's light, it's the Irishman or Writers Tears, the Distillers Edition. Ice, ginger ale, and lots of fresh mint. Maybe 4 or 5 leaves shoved right in there. Right, it is refreshing. It's light. It's just, and it's so easy to make. And I'm not a mixologist, and I get frustrated when I have my ingredients list here. And I got all of them. I got all 6 of them, but there's one actually. No, the 7th one I don't have. So I end up. So I like them to be quite simple, and if I can go to the garden and pick a bunch of mint, bang, that's great. So all really I need is the ginger ale, and then of course you can change that if ginger ale is not to your taste, with other lemonades even, just to experiment. But they make a lovely light spritzer, really just beautiful.
I really want to go home this weekend and try a few different ones, because I'm always a bit like scared to try difficult cocktails. A bit like you say, you see the list of the ingredients and you're like, oh God, I don't even know what that is. And you're kind of, I don't know how to do that. But from what I understand now, when I've talked to quite a lot of bartenders and so on, they're like, come on, just try, what can go wrong,
Yeah, like mint, I love mint, and it's very refreshing. So it's very simple, and you just need one mixer. So is that, for me, I love ginger ale, but you might have your own preference. So just one mixer, lots of ice, your Irishman or your Writers Tears to your choice, bang, the mint. Substitute the mint with basil or basil. Wow. Now,
I haven't done that.
That is really interesting. And I give you, if you want to maybe, even experiment and leave the basil in your wee bottle, put in 2 or 3 leaves, leave it in there overnight, or, for a number of hours at least, infused, and then use that in your cocktail. Wow.
I have to try that.
That sounds something you can also try as a Swedish schnapps.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah. Also, and I'm generalizing here, the great thing about Irish whiskey, it really works well in cocktail because generally it's not peated. Yeah. So peated whiskeys work in cocktails. But I'm biased, and I think unpeated whiskies are more open to be influenced by the other ingredients, and they work well.
I think we have quite a few ideas to actually try at home. But for you guys at home that are not sure what to try this weekend, maybe we can put up some links or some recipes, cocktail recipes, and you can check it out on our website maybe in a day or something. I'm sure that we can figure that out somehow. But what about this summer, Bernard? Will you have any time off, or is it going to be full on work, or
no? I have to.
Do you have?
Yeah, we all need to take time off. I presume we're like you guys. We're all suffering from COVID. Therefore, we have to be careful how we move around. So, traveling internationally is a pain in the butt. So, I think you can't get a camper van for love nor money here at the moment because they're just
like here.
Yeah. Walking, hiking.
Yeah,
biking. That's what I'm going to be doing with the family. I've got 4 girls, and we like the outdoors life. So it'll be, barbecues at home, friends, lots of friends. I'll be taking a couple of weeks off through the summer. The simple things: some good food, good whiskey, good music, and lots of
company. Finally, finally we can maybe see friends and family a bit more than. I mean, last year was challenging. Yeah. Let's say.
Listen, we're like you. We're social animals. We love the crack. We love the pub. We love the bit of music, and that's what we're craving. So it's the simple things. We don't need the south of France or whatever. We are happy when we're together. Good, just good living, good food, good crack, good drink.
Yeah.
Sounds like my vacation plans, actually. So yeah, I'm also looking forward to go out in the nature and having a great time this summer.
Yeah, there's something healing about that. You know, you all know, like I live on a small farm, and I just, even at lunchtime, I go home every lunchtime and just, you know, sit in the field or sit on the ditch and, you know, have my sandwich, and just the nature itself is wonderful. Yeah.
So guys, I think we need to close this hour. So are there any final questions from you listening out there?
I don't think it is, but
so. Yeah.
if there are a lot of more questions, you're more than welcome to send us some messages on Facebook or and we will try and answer. And if there are questions for Bernard, we will send them through to you and your team as well. Well, Bernard, I think that we could talk for hours here because this is so interesting and super fun. I hope that next time we will see each other, maybe in Ireland or here. Who knows?
Yes, for sure. If I get to Sweden, I'm contacting you guys.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. Maybe we can have a small little tasting for a couple of people.
Oh, we can make a big. We can do a big one. Yeah,
a big one. Why not?
Yeah. Let's have a bit of fun. But you know, it's lovely talking to you guys, and Emma and Jonas, and Jerome in the background there. So you know, you've been very good to set this up with your audience, and you know, we love Sweden. We can't wait to get back. And thank you for drinking Irish.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone, and for all of you guys that are watching, tack allesammans och ha en jättetrevlig kväll, och det här kan ni kolla på igen och igen och igen om ni vill. Skål allesammans!
Skål!
Hej! Bye! Mm.